Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Direct Admissions for High Schools virtual training on joint powers agreements, data sharing agreements, and how to invoice the Office of Higher Education Agency. My name is Aaron Salasek. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the coordinator of Direct Admissions Minnesota and your main point person for the program. I will turn it over for a quick introduction from my colleague, Sally.
Thank you, Aaron. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sally Krieger-Constantine. I'm the Direct Admissions Research Analyst. Primarily, I do most of the data collection, cleaning, and distribution. I look forward to working with you all. I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Sarah.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Burkhart. I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator at the Office of Higher Education. I use she, her pronouns. And yeah, I primarily work on the marketing side of direct admissions. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, team. And we do have a fourth team member, our Assistant Commissioner, Dr. Wendy Robinson, who oversees programs, policies, and grants here at the agency. She sends her warm welcomes as well. So for today's agenda, again, the frame of the training is around joint powers agreements, data sharing agreements, and invoicing, because there are funds tied to this program that we're able to distribute to you for participating. We'll start with a general overview and timeline for the program. And then we're actually going to dive quite deeply into data sharing agreements and joint powers agreements before leaving some time at the end for questions. In terms of the purpose, the why we do the work, and the project overview and background, again, the goal is to encourage all high school seniors to think of themselves as college material and to offer them a proactive direct admissions opportunity. This program seeks to take away the anxiety that's bound up in what was formerly the traditional college application process. And rather than students wondering if they'll get in, it extends directly to them at the outset of their senior year a list of participating colleges and universities within Minnesota who are willing to offer them admission. It's designed to spark and supplement your college exploration activities that you conduct locally. It doesn't dictate where students should go. And one of the beautiful things about this program that my colleagues and I appreciate is the volition is always in the hands of students. We all do the work as a community, but the students are the ones driving the bus, which is wonderful. There are 55 participating colleges again this year, so that's the same as the prior year. And it includes all of our Minnesota State colleges and universities, so all the 2-year community and technical colleges and the 7 state universities. 4 of the 5 University of Minnesota campuses, Duluth, Morris, Rochester, and Crookston. 2 of the tribal colleges, Red Lake Nation and White Earth Tribal and Community College. And 16 of our private nonprofit colleges, which is the majority of them in the Minnesota Private College Council throughout the state of Minnesota. In terms of the broad arc, so all of those different partners engaged in the work, it's conducted collaboratively by high schools, our agency, the Office of Higher Education, and colleges, and this all occurs by 6 critical steps throughout the program's life cycle. The first one is that high schools and colleges and universities opt in to the program. As you know, you applied and you were admitted to the Corps for the fall. Congratulations again. We also require mandatory data sharing agreements and joint powers agreements because of the nature of the information that is shared between all of us as partners. So colleges and universities have already completed their mandatory data sharing agreements. Those last for 5 years. They're in their 2nd year. And again, one of the primary objects that we're discussing today is the data sharing agreements. At the outset of the program's year, high schools notify families of the school's participation and send a Tennyson or FERPA notice to allow for opting out of the program. And this is per your local directory and data practices processes. You would exclude students and families, students from families who choose to opt out. And this is really primarily done during the high school counselor's academic review process, which consists of a student's end of junior year unweighted cumulative GPA and grades in 3 core areas, math, science, and English, which would then assign a student to a specific one of 6 admissions tiers that the colleges and universities have opted into. High schools will also notify students and parents or guardians by the communication of their choosing, whether it's a letter, email, or some other portal notification of their acceptance for direct admissions and the colleges that are available to them. Students then respond to those survey results and select their colleges of choice, the top institutions that they'd be interested in and offer proactive admission. Those responses are collected by the high school, and that's distributed either through the student information system via secure file transfer or other processes that we will discuss in more depth at Monday's training on building the data. Office of Higher Education, we take on the role of compiling, quality assuring, and then securely transmitting all of that data of the students to their respective colleges of choice. Students have the option of submitting additional optional material, supplemental information through an agency managed form. We will also talk about that at length in the next training too, but that information would accompany the 14 basic fields that we're going to talk about a little bit later today. Lastly, colleges sort of take the role from there and work with students directly as direct admissions applicants or inquiries and lets them know of their next steps in the process. So for today, our focus on data sharing and joint powers, we're really sort of looking at those first two macro tasks that are a part of the program. The FERPA notification, the information that's transferred between schools, and the contracts that sort of guide us and conduct us in that work. So we talked about the overarching macro view, but specific to the high schools, there are also 6 tasks that are conducted. Those consist of reviewing the end of junior year unweighted GPA and course grades in those core areas, again, English, science, and math, to see if the student meets the admissions criteria of the participating colleges and universities, and ultimately sort of dictates what tier they reside in. Notifying those high school seniors and parents or guardians of their acceptance and encouraging them to learn more about the programs offered through the participating colleges. So research and continuous reminders about engaging with colleges. Prompting students to respond to those notifications and to follow through with any action items or requests of the colleges and universities. Collecting those responses through secure file transfer. Sending the students' transcripts to the colleges that they select, which is also governed by your local processes. And our door is always open. Please collaborate and provide feedback to us about how things are going, the student experience, and opportunities for process and program improvement. This next slide is a bit of a simpler version, and it is sort of time indicated. So for the months of May and June, you'll have the opportunity to share direct admissions juniors video and materials with high school juniors. That'll actually be a forthcoming item from Sarah, from our agency, but Sarah's putting it together. It's a marketing toolkit that you'll have the opportunity to use and leverage. So that's forthcoming. For today's training, it's the next 2 bulleted points, the principal or superintendent signing the data sharing agreement, as well as the joint powers agreement to allow for the distribution of program funds. And just generally speaking, these next few months, familiarizing yourselves with the marketing materials that are available to you, as well as all the awesome resources that Office of Higher Education has put together as a toolkit. And that'll actually be a large focus of the 3rd training in this series, the different items that you have at your disposal to market both internally as a school, but also broadly speaking, how to market the program. June through August are when counselors or career center staff, whomever is sort of conducting the academic review, can start to plan out that work. You'll have the opportunity to order and share promotional materials with your high schools. That can range from posters to flyers. Our colleges even have table toppers that you'll see at fairs out in the community where they're indicating that they're direct admissions colleges. Sarah will also talk about that process of how to order materials in the 3rd training. And FERPA notifications can either be sent to parents if you are back in August, or you can start getting that information ready over the summer for an early send once the school year starts up again. And then really from whenever you return to school through October 31st, Halloween, it's sending out those communications after the academic review is conducted and reminding and nudging students to take advantage of this program. To date, we've had over 34,000 requests for applications submitted through the program in the current year. This program does run through mid-June, through the whole school year, so it's still ongoing. And we have seen that about 22% of our eligible seniors are taking advantage of applying to at least one higher education institution through the program. You are joining this phenomenal work. Actually, one really exciting metric for us that you have helped contribute to is that at the outset of fall, with all of you as new partners in the work, we're pretty close to probably meeting and likely exceeding 50% of high school seniors across the state of Minnesota. So I just want to pause and name that because that's really important, and I appreciate your courage in taking this on locally to implement. So we're going to dive a bit deeper for a moment into the data flow overview and timeline, because this is really what the data sharing agreement sort of governs. Without those agreements in place, we can't exchange data. And so that's why it's such an important factor. And so, for those of you who might be a visual learner, you can see that the academic review that we had mentioned is what is conducted to, again, place a student within their respective tier. The student then receives letters. We use the term, by the way, letters, emails, survey sort of interchangeably because there's so many communication vehicles that high schools can use. But whatever that survey vehicle is, the students get that and then are able to respond and select any and all colleges and universities of interest. One thing of note is that there is no limit on the number of colleges and universities a student can accept. Can request proactive admission from. For example, if a student placed into academic tier 6, they would have up to 55 institutions from which they could choose. We are seeing the average of around 6 or 7 per student, and that is well within the norm of national normative behaviors. So it's really exciting that they're taking advantage of this program. When students respond, those survey results, plus any additional information they choose to provide through the optional supplemental form, are what make their way to the agency, either through the data file creation process or directly from the student information system. So this program is fully built within JMC and Infinite Campus. Again, we will discuss all of the nuances of how to build the data in Monday morning's training. So getting back to the focus of this training, there's really 2 things. And if you take nothing else away from this training today, please remember this slide. I think it's slide number 10. The principals and superintendents are looped into the program for so many reasons, being the champions and in many instances making the administrative decision to join. However, they play an important role in usually being the signatory for both the data sharing agreement and the joint powers agreement, because they lead that work. And so in terms of your authorized representatives for the data sharing agreement and the joint powers agreement, you can see that it's often someone with the authority to do so, either to enter into contracts or who can make those decisions about the data that is to be shared. And it's the same thing with the joint powers, because it's a contract that governs the distribution of funding from us to you. And so again, maybe if you're taking notes, jot down slide 10. This is really the essence and the action item from today's training. And we're going to dive very deeply into each of these now. So the data sharing agreement, really the agreement between us as an agency and you, the school or district, to share data. That is the basic premise of this whole thing. And it spells out a number of ways that relationship is governed and how we can interact. We'll cover each of them now, but I want to run through all of them at the outset here. So why we'll share the data, so the philosophy of the program of direct admissions. Who we are, just defining the parties. How we can share the data legally, the data that we can share, what we can and cannot do with that data, who will do what, and our legal obligations and what to do if something goes wrong. I know that a lot of that can sound very intimidating. It is a contract, but I do want you to know that every high school that has participated in this program, every district, this is step one, and it's a necessary part of the process to continue on. The reason we introduce this in the first training is because when we have these documents in a template form, we will share them out to you all, to new participating high schools, as well as a quick guide that we've developed at the agency on each one, actually, data sharing agreements and joint powers agreements. The quick guide is a very summary document. It sort of walks through all the different things that we're going to spell out over the next several slides. But it's an opportunity for you to check in with your own legal counsel at the district or high school office, or at the via superintendents or principals if they're leading that discussion. We also know that in some instances, many of you might have to go to a board. And if that's the case, you'll want to start that conversation early, sort of build in enough time so we have a smooth start to the fall when we all come back and can conduct the academic review and move forward on the deliverables of the program. So again, why we share the data, it's really the essence of this program. Without the data, we have nothing to distribute to the colleges and universities by which they can extend proactive admission to students. You'll also see that in the second paragraph from this snapshot, you have the actual legislation itself. Who we are is simply the parties that are engaged in this contract. So OHE, Office of Higher Education. You'll notice that colleges and universities that are participating, they also, again, have their own set of data sharing agreements that they abide by. And then you, the party as the school, or in some instances, I know some of you will probably choose to go in as a district because you have multiples of high schools that are all under the same district umbrella. How we can share the data legally, this just spells out the nature of the relationship between all of us. So the agency, you as a local education institution, FERPA that we'll abide by, and we'll actually dive into that a bit deeper between myself with a general review and then Sarah with some of the resources that we have to support you. And then just being compliant with the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act and the Family Education Privacy Act as well. So what we can and cannot do with the data, as well as who will do what, is also spelled out in the data sharing agreement. So another way of saying that is the purpose and the scope. This includes the information that will be shared to facilitate the opportunity of proactive admission through the program. The data shared is specific to students in 12th grade at participating high schools, and then also the participating colleges and universities that are a party of the program. And then how the data will be shared. So in all instances, excuse me, it's secure file transfer. We abide by all the best practices around data privacy, security, and so on. The data that is specifically shared is also spelled out in attachment 1 of the data sharing agreements. And many of you will be familiar with these 14 fields. They're pretty basic. We did intentionally keep them as much as possible to the minimum number of fields for a number of reasons, including data integrity and whatnot, but also because the whole idea is to streamline this process for proactive admission. And so we asked the colleges and universities, as well as considered as an agency, what is sort of the minimum number of items that we need to actually conduct this program through to continuum without burdening any particular party that's a part of the program as a whole. What we'll do is spelled out also in terms of the duties. And so you'll see specifically that we talk at length about the Tennyson warning. The FERPA notification is what we will refer to it in a bit, as well as, again, complying by data privacy practices and so on. And so in terms of the FERPA notification, there's a sample up there, but you'll see that we actually have this available already. The same text is given to all high schools. We'd also ask that you have your legal counsel at your school or district review this and adjust it and amend it and edit it to your local practices and procedures. And so as an example, this past year, we had some schools where they had to notify their high school counselor directly by email within a 7 to 10 day range of the FERPA notification going out. We also had a number of others who had a QR code, and then the students could opt out directly from the QR code. So point in case, it's whatever your local practices are. And so you can see that we've highlighted some of those editable areas of the FERPA notification itself and the parent opt-out. This is really the place where students and families can opt out of the program. As an example, if Aaron did not opt out by the FERPA process, but I was at a direct admissions participating high school, I'll just use Stillwater High School as an example. If I did not opt out, I could still get the survey notification after the academic review was conducted. And also, just so you know, there's still an I'm not interested in direct admissions option of all the survey results. So at no point is a student forced into choosing anything. But I just wanted to stress that this is really the point at which a student excludes themselves entirely from the program. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah because we've done quite a bit of work here in terms of trying to be accessible. And so Sarah will speak to just a few of the resources around the FERPA notification.
Yep, so part of my role here is to just facilitate some translation requests, just whatever comes in for direct admission. So we currently have the FERPA template translated into Hmong, Karen, Korean, Oromo, Somali, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And we are willing to work with districts if you do have a specific language need that's not listed in the template. Just get in contact with us just so we can learn more about what your needs are. But yeah, so those templates are available, and then just the lines that are able to be personalized with your local district info. Just let us know what your personalized section is for each language and which languages you need. And then we will take that information and then send it back to you in your translated FERPA notification. So yeah, just so you guys are aware of which languages we currently have available. And yeah, we are willing to work with you on just an individual basis as well. We can move on to the next slide. And then, yeah, so we just listed an example here. This is an example from Sowash schools, just so you can see something that a school has done before. So they had just created an opt-out form. I believe it was a Google form that they used that they just linked in their own letter. And then we just translated that section right into the Hmong language right there that you can see. So, yep, you can turn it over back to Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And again, we're talking about a lot of resources. For print materials, we do have an ordering process by which that print material will be accessible to you. That again will be a part of the third training on logistics, which is on the 15th. So getting back to the last couple of components for the data sharing agreement. The legal obligations and what to do if something goes wrong. And so this just spells out our responsibilities as an agency in terms of secure method of transmission of the data, providing that information and that data to colleges and universities securely, and so on and so forth. And so again, these are all the different elements that govern the data sharing agreement. When we do send this information out, you will have sort of a quick hits 1 or 2 pager, which will go through this at length as well. And again, you'll have access to this PowerPoint after today too. The legal obligations do continue because there's the data practices provisions, as well as the miscellaneous provisions as well. Just so you all are aware, I'm sure many of you know this already, but being a state agency, a lot of these are standard and they're standard parts of contracts that we engage in as a broader entity. So in terms of data sharing agreements, next steps before we turn to joint powers agreements, which is going to be shorter, The data sharing agreement is sent to your principal or will be sent to your principal or superintendent for review after it clears our general counsel, which honestly, folks, that should be any time now. It has been under review and many of the slides actually that you saw were taken directly from it because our general counsel is pretty confident that it will move forward. It just has to go through the process. All schools will have the same data sharing agreement language. And the signatures are collected electronically by us as an agency using DocuSign. And so the documents that I'm sending to you as templates will be really for your review and consideration and vetting through legal counsel. But once I hear back from you that all looks well, we'll move forward with actual document distribution. And a lot of that will be managed electronically to streamline the process. All right, so we're going to turn to joint powers agreements now. And this is really the second contract that is conducted at the outset or even prior to the start of everything in the fall. And so this agreement is really a contract for services and payment between two public entities. So in this instance, it's us, the agency, and you again, the school or the district. And it does spell out a number of things, just like the data sharing agreement had a number of components. This one has a number as well. So I'm going to run through all of them first, but then we're going to dive into each one a little bit. The first one is who is doing the contracting, why we're doing it, who will do what the duties are again, how much we'll pay for services and how payment will be made, and then our legal obligations for state contracts. And that's pretty specific to us as an agency. So in terms of the first one, the who, it's you and us. It's the agency, Office of Higher Education, it's you, and it's for the distribution of funds. And you can see St. Paul Public Schools as an example, and it's spelled out right at the top. In terms of why we are contracting, again, this is really because of the program and the essence of the program, promoting the idea that all students are college material through proactively extending offers of admission, and then getting into many of the things we just covered in the data agreement in terms of how the academic review is conducted, the data that's transferred, and so on. And you'll see that the terms of the agreement are effective from August 1, 2024 through June 30, but it just runs the fiscal year essentially. So we'll be in communication prior to August 1. If you have questions prior to August 1, please don't hesitate to reach out. In terms of who will do what, this is explicitly what has to be done. And actually all of the items that are listed here harken back to sort of the outset of the presentation where we talked about those 6 different tasks that are conducted at the macro level, as well as the 6 additional tasks that are specific to the high school. That's basically what is spelled out here. And so staffing the program, developing the roster for the academic review, testing the software, tracking students, as we ask questions of you as an agency, keeping us informed of how the process is going or if there's anything we can do to help troubleshoot and so on. A few that I want to call attention to, which are slightly nuanced from last year's joint powers agreement, is really the effort to pair direct admissions more with FAFSA, free application for federal student aid, and Minnesota DREAM Act information. In other words, pairing the program in correlation with financial aid education. Well as, and again, this was a criteria of last year, but just a reminder to send those transcripts as a part of the program per your local process. It also spells out what we as a state have to do, and that includes a long list of things like keeping you updated on data and analytics. That is a large part of my colleague Sally's role, and Sally does a wonderful job there, but that's something that we are obligated to do as well. Conducting the program and fulfilling the deliverables and being responsive to you as a part of the program as well. There is a clause in the joint powers agreement that speaks to payment. And so again, a couple of you reached out to me and asked, well, Aaron, I didn't think there was anything in terms of having to pay for the program. And I'm sorry for any confusion that that language might have caused, but we actually pay you. OHE distributes money to you as a gesture of joining the program, but also because it's meant to offset and augment college search activities or any time or however you want to distribute that monies locally. And so the payment goes through all the parties. So if you're going in as a district, you'll see each high school listed uniquely there. Or if you're going in just as a sole high school, it would be listed there. The costs, and we'll look at those tables in a second. The total obligation, which really just, ideally these are multi-year contracts. For us, they will be 1 year, fiscal year 25, before the biennium when we go back as an agency and continue the good work of keeping this program moving forward, and so on. And you'll also see for clause 4, this is where I'm listed as your main staff point person, but it's also the governmental unit's authorized rep, which in most instances is your principal or superintendent. And then lastly, it does go through the legal obligations for state contracts again, which is basically all the things that we agree to abide by all the aforementioned parts of the joint powers agreement. So in terms of next steps here, when this is ready, because again, it's also under review by general counsel, it will also be sent to your principal and superintendent. That template, again, is really for your review. If there's any questions about it, or if legal has any questions, that's a dialogue. But we do also sort of streamline and expedite that process as well through DocuSign. And so we do try to be quick and nimble as possible and use those technologies as they're able to be employed. So we do all of that because, again, we're able to distribute program funds to you. And so I just wanted to cover, this is a little new from last year's training, but I did want to cover the process by which you can go about invoicing the agency and introducing this concept early. So it is part of, excuse me, how we wrote the legislative program draft, that we had funds that can be allocated to help administer or augment the program. And so the legislative language put specific requirements on how that funding could be employed, but the intent is that it's used on college search or admissions related or adjacent activity at the high school. This is, again, sort of a good faith gesture as we have monies and you're all in and we have the money to support you for next year. But we do know that high schools do incur staff time because, what you're doing for the program are other things you could be doing at the local high school. Some of our high school partners have used it to purchase technologies. Others have used it in a number of creative ways. And so also new for you this year, our new high school partners, we've aggregated how many of our current high school partners have used their funding. And you'll see that there's all sorts of cool, nuanced ways that they have chosen to employ some of these monies. And we know it's not a huge amount of money, but whether you're getting $500 or $1,000, and we'll see those cost tables on the next slide, you can see how that can go a long way in offsetting e-transcript costs or hosting a college speaker, going on an in-state college visit, and so on. And so again, these are just some of the ways that that our high schools have employed the funding this current year. But that's something that I'm always open to. If you have a question or an idea on whether a particular way the funding can be employed is relevant, you can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to engage in that discussion. So those cost tables are indicated here, and this is based on the number of student notifications that are sent. This is actually specifically taken from the template joint powers agreement. So you'll actually see this within that joint powers agreement when it comes to you in draft form. But the number of notifications sent, which I think a simpler way of saying this is actually what is the size of your senior student body. So if it's between that 1 and 499, or if it's greater than 500, you'll get that cost. In order to get that fund dispersed to you, as a document, and this will also accompany the joint powers template. But basically what we need to see is an invoice template that is similar to the one on the right, the made up high school. You can use your local template, but it basically has to have the number of direct admission student notifications sent and the first date by which those were sent. So basically, when you get to the point in the program year where you start survey notifications, from that point forward, you can invoice us really at any time, and we can disperse that funding. I know there's a lot of variance and nuance in terms of how invoices are conducted at the local level, but just know that once those surveys are sent, that process can commence and we can just disperse that funding. And if you have any questions about that too, please don't hesitate to reach out. So the document that I will send to you separately is sort of unpacked on the left side, but make sure there's that contact person for the invoice if we have questions. The billing goes directly to our accounts receivable team here at the agency because they expedite everything that's needed to distribute the funding to you. The details that are needed include the invoice date, the SWIFT contract number, and so on. And then those details that I mentioned about the total number of survey notifications sent and so on and so forth are spelled out in description line 1 with the delivery date and then the total that we owe you as an agency as well. So I want to thank you again for attending today's training. We covered primarily 3 components of the program: the data sharing agreement, the mandatory data sharing agreement, the mandatory joint powers agreement, and the invoicing process by which you can receive program funds. You can see my contact information as well as my colleague's Sally up there for you. And I want to end or close by saying and extending gratitude for all that you do currently and for all that you will do as a participant in the program. I do also want to formally welcome you again to the cohort for direct admissions 2024-2025. Thank you everybody for joining.